Chapter 1: The Fangirl Turned Critic. The kettle screamed again, and Lara didn't move. Steam curled into the air like an exhausted sigh, fogging the small kitchen window where city lights bled through the drizzle. Her mother was asleep in the next room, the oxygen machine humming a rhythm that reminded Lara to keep breathing too. The laptop screen glowed in front of her, Twitter her nighttime battlefield. At Realty Queen, if Evan Hart's smile gets any faker, I'll need sunglasses for the hypocrisy glare. The post sent a tiny thrill down her spine as the likes began to climb. 5, 10, 23, a dozen laughing emojis. Someone replied, "Queen, you always say what we're all thinking." She wasn't proud of it, but it was something. Validation in 280 characters. Power in a world that never seemed to give her any. By day, Lara Dawson freelanced for small marketing firms, writing captions for brands that couldn't afford to pay her on time. By night, she scrolled through social media like it was a job she couldn't quit. She told herself it was research. In truth, it was addiction to outrage, to distraction, to forgetting. Evan Hart used to be her comfort actor. She'd watched his interviews religiously, memorized the soft-spoken way he thanked his fans. Back when she was 18 and her father had just left, Evan's movies made her believe kindness still existed. Until the scandal. A shaky video leaked, him sneering at autograph seekers, calling fans pathetic. She'd felt her stomach turn. She'd defended him at first, then realized she looked stupid doing so. "Never meet your heroes," she'd muttered, deleting her fan account and birthing. At Realty Queen that same night. Now, 5 years later, she made rent roasting people like him. The kettle had stopped shrieking, leaving the room heavy and still. Lara poured herself a cup of instant coffee and scrolled through her DMs. One new message, unread, from an account with no profile picture. At Media Insider UK, "Heard you have a talent for spotting fake celebrities. What if we pay you to prove it?" Her finger hovered over the message. She knew it screamed scam, but curiosity itched. She clicked. At Media Insider UK, "Evan Hart's PR is hiring a new assistant. Short-term contract. Get close. Confirm what everyone suspects. The nice guy act is just that. There's £5,000 if you can get us proof." Lara's breath caught. She read it twice. £5,000, that was more than 2 months of hospital payments for her mum. She typed, "And if he turns out not to be fake?" The reply came instantly. "Then you'll have nothing to report. Easy money, right?" Her lips twisted into a half-smile. Easy money. Easy morality. Her heart thudded in her chest, the kind of rhythm that felt too close to temptation. She thought about her mother's medical bills piling on the fridge, about the bland emails from clients processing payment soon, about the nights she'd spent mocking a man she hadn't met in person, and the strange satisfaction it gave her. Maybe it was time to prove she was right. She opened a new browser tab and typed, "Hart Media Group, Careers." A listing stared back at her. Personal assistant to Mr. Evan Hart. Short-term contract. Immediate start. She clicked, apply. Her fingers shook a little as she filled in her details under her real name, Lara Dawson, and attached her polished CV. Before hitting send, she whispered to herself, "If he's really the saint his fans think he is, he has nothing to hide." Then she pressed submit. The screen blinked. Application sent. A strange calm settled over her, the kind that comes right before a storm. She didn't know yet that Evan Hart would read her resume himself, or that the man she thought she hated would soon be the only one who'd ever look at her and see through every mask she wore. Chapter 2: The Man Behind the Mask. The lights were too bright. They always were. Evan Hart squinted as another bulb flashed, his reflection caught in 5 different mirrors around the makeup room. He looked like a product, every hair sculpted, every freckle powdered into submission. "Smile, Evan," the makeup artist chirped, swiping gloss across his lips. "The press junket starts in 15. Smile." He'd been smiling for 11 years. By now, his cheeks could fake warmth even when his stomach was turning. He had mastered the art of looking grateful on cue. The headlines from last month still haunted his phone. Evan Hart snaps at reporter. Anger issues rumors grow. Fallen golden boy? He hadn't snapped. He'd simply asked for privacy, a human request apparently headline-worthy when you lived in glass. Ready, mate? Maya's voice pulled him back to the present. His publicist. Crisp suit, tablet in hand, eyes tired but loyal. She'd been with him since the start, the last one left from the original team. As ready as I'll ever be, Evan murmured, standing to smooth his shirt. His own face stared back at him from the poster on the wall. The Second Son, his latest film. A love story about forgiveness. The tagline read. The irony didn't escape him. He stepped onto the interview stage, camera shutters clacking like machine guns. Evan, over here. Rumors about your temper. Care to comment? He flashed his polite grin. Only that I save my temper for bad coffee. They laughed, they loved him, they moved on. He felt nothing. Later that night, Evan sat alone in his apartment. Sleek, expensive, utterly silent. City lights blinked across the Thames, but he barely saw them. He scrolled through his secret Twitter account, the one under a random alias. No one knew it was him. He followed everything. Fan edits, gossip threads, hate forums. It was masochistic, but he preferred brutal honesty over empty praise. That's when he saw it again. At Realty Queen. The woman was relentless. Evan Hart should win an Oscar for pretending to be humble. You can almost smell the PR spin through the screen. It's sad how he used to look human. They should have angered him. Instead, he caught himself smiling. Her words were cruel, yes, but smart, observant in ways his team had stopped being. She saw through the facade of celebrity culture itself. She's not wrong, he muttered to himself, scrolling further. A week later, Maya was outlining candidates for the new assistant position. We'll filter through HR, she said, tapping her tablet. We don't want another mole after that magazine intern incident. Evan leaned back, fingers steepled. I'll handle it. Maya frowned. You? Since when do you interview assistants? Since I got tired of hiring people who think my calendar's a front-page story. So, that afternoon, he sat across from a line of hopefuls. Stylists, graduates, influencers dressed like interns from a Vogue fantasy. All fake smiles, all rehearsed compliments. He could predict every answer before they even opened their mouths. Until her. She walked in wearing a navy blouse and jeans, too casual for the building, but somehow appropriate for her. Her hair was slightly out of place, her nails chipped. And her eyes, calm, steady, no sparkle of recognition, no fan energy. Just a woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. He scanned her resume. Overqualified. Marketing degree, freelance media work, past PR internships. Her experience screamed career detour. So, he began, you've worked in publicity before? Yes, she said, tone professional, almost cold. But not for celebrities. Any reason you're applying for this one? She met his gaze evenly. Short contract. Decent pay. I need work.
No pretense. No flatty.
No. I've always admired your work. For the first time all afternoon, Evan's interest flickered. There was something familiar in her sarcasm. That quiet disdain. That edge like she'd seen behind too many curtains and didn't believe in the show anymore. He tilted his head. Intrigued. Not a fan then? She gave a quick half-smile. I don't really have the time to be anyone's fan, Mr. Hart. It shouldn't have felt refreshing. But it did. Good, he said, signing the last page of her application. Fans make terrible assistants. Her brows lifted slightly, but she said nothing. When she left, Maya peeked in, raising an eyebrow. That's the one, Evan said, still looking at the empty chair where she'd sat. Why? She didn't flinch, he replied simply. But privately, Evan wondered why her voice, her stare, and her faintly mocking tone had stuck in his mind long after she was gone. And later that night, when he scrolled through at Realty Queen again, reading her latest post, even when he's quiet, Evan Hart somehow manages to look self-absorbed. He laughed, softly, to himself, because for the first time in a long while the mask slipped, and he didn't mind at all. Chapter 3: Terms and Tension. The first week was chaos wrapped in caffeine. Lara hadn't realized that being a personal assistant to a celebrity was less about scheduling and more about survival. Evan's life ran on 15-minute increments. Interviews, fittings, rehearsals, and quick calls that lasted an hour. Every moment was another minor crisis disguised as professionalism. By Wednesday morning, she had spilled coffee twice, mispronounced the director's name once, and accidentally sent an email that began with "Good morning" instead of "morning." She was still mourning her dignity. "Relax," Maya, the publicist, had said on day one. "He's not as scary as he looks." Lara disagreed. Evan Hart wasn't scary, he was infuriatingly composed. Everything about him was curated. The pressed shirts, the easy charm, the way he could silence a room just by walking through it. She told herself it was all fake, all performance. Still, it was hard to roll your eyes at a man who looked like sin and sincerity in equal measure. "Miss Dawson." His voice came from behind her as she typed out a press memo, smooth and teasing. "You've been frowning at that screen for 20 minutes. Should I be worried you're plotting my demise?" She startled, caught between irritation and embarrassment. "Just your schedule, sir." "Same thing, really?" He laughed, soft, low, dangerously warm. "Fair enough. Coffee?" She glanced up. "No sugar, oat milk, right?" "Perfect." He took the cup she handed him, sipped, and made a dramatic face. "This tastes suspiciously like mine from yesterday." "That's because it is yours from yesterday," she shot back, deadpan. He arched a brow. "Recycling coffee? That's a new level of cruelty." "Budget cuts," she said. "Your kindness fund has been reallocated to caffeine." He laughed again, and she hated how that sound made her chest feel lighter. By Thursday he had begun playing. Small things at first, switching her phone language to French, hiding her notepad, pretending to forget his own schedule just to make her explain it again. Each prank ended with his trademark grin, and each time she told herself she wasn't flustered. She was annoyed, absolutely. "You don't smile much, Miss Dawson," he remarked one afternoon, leaning against the doorframe of his dressing room. "I save it for people who earn it," she replied without missing a beat. He tilted his head, the grin widening. Challenge accepted, and somehow she knew he meant it. She should have hated this job. The late nights, the fake people, the endless vanity. But there was something hypnotic about being near him when the cameras weren't rolling. When the audience disappeared, Evan became quieter, almost thoughtful, picking at guitar strings, humming half-written lyrics under his breath. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't even arrogant, really, just tired. Still, she couldn't forget why she was there. Every night, back in her rented flat, she'd take out her phone and record short clips. Nothing scandalous, just fragments. Him rehearsing lines, talking to fans, frowning at a script. Proof, she told herself, of how artificial it all was. But the more she filmed, the less certain she became. He wasn't acting all the time. Sometimes he was just Evan. Funny, oddly gentle, painfully human. On Friday evening, while they waited for a car outside the studio, she saw him through the reflection of the glass door, hands in pockets, watching the sky as if the world belonged to someone else. "You ever get tired of people looking at you?" she asked before she could stop herself. He glanced sideways. "All the time." "Then why keep doing it?" He smiled faintly. "Because when I stop performing, everyone else panics. It's easier to be who they need than to explain who I actually am." She looked at him then, really looked, and something in her chest shifted, just a fraction. He caught the look and, with a teasing half-smile, said, "Careful, Miss Dawson." That almost sounded like sympathy. "It wasn't," she lied. "Of course not," he said softly. "You're far too professional for that." The car pulled up, and the moment broke. She climbed in first, trying not to notice that he waited for her door to close before his. That night, Lara uploaded the last clip to her hidden folder and stared at the screen. In it, Evan was laughing with a makeup artist, hair messy, eyes crinkled. No arrogance, no mask. The blogger's message blinked at the top of her inbox. "Any progress? Need something juicy soon." Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Working on it." She pressed send, closed the laptop, and sat in the dark, heart pounding with guilt, because for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was exposing a fraud or betraying someone real. Chapter 4: Rules of the Game. By Monday morning, the internet had already invented 3 new rumors about Evan Hart: that he'd punched a paparazzo, that he was secretly married, and that his mysterious new assistant had been seen leaving his flat at midnight. Lara nearly choked on her coffee when she saw that headline. It took her 5 minutes of deep breathing before walking into the office, only to find Maya Reed waiting, arms folded, tablet in hand, the look of a woman whose patience was a precious and rapidly depleting resource. "Good morning," Maya said flatly. "Mr. Hart, may I have a word?" Evan looked up from his phone with an innocent smile. "You just did. Try another one, then." Lara quietly sank behind her desk as the two stepped into the hall. She could still hear the low murmur of Maya's voice through the half-closed door. Words like boundaries, tabloids, and image control floated through the air. When Evan returned, he had that look. Half amused, half guilty, entirely boyish. "Apparently, I'm not allowed to look at my assistant like she's a human being anymore," he said. Lara raised an eyebrow. "You could try not looking at me at all." "Impossible," he said without hesitation. "You're in my calendar 12 hours a day." She rolled her eyes and handed him his updated schedule. "So, what did we learn today, Mr. Hart?" He took the paper, grinning. "That every good partnership needs rules." "Oh, please. No, seriously." He leaned on her desk, lowering his voice like he was letting her in on a secret. "Let's draft them. Rules of engagement." "Engagement?" she repeated, suspicious. "Not that kind of engagement," he said, smirking. "Calm down, Miss Dawson." He scribbled something on the back of a script and handed it to her. 3 bullet points written in quick, messy handwriting. No compliments. No personal questions. No lying. Lara scanned the list, trying not to smile. "What are we, middle schoolers?" "Professional adults," he said, completely serious. "And rule 1 is for your safety. You'd fall for me instantly if I started complimenting you." She snorted. "You're insufferable. See? It's already working." She signed the paper with an exaggerated flourish. "Fine. But rule 3's unfair." "Why?" She met his eyes. "You're an actor. Lying's basically your religion." He laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. "Touché, Miss Dawson." She didn't tell him she'd already broken rule number 3 before lunch. By midweek, they were on a plane to Scotland for a charity shoot, a short film and hospital visit organized by the studio. Lara had never traveled for work before. She'd packed like a scout preparing for apocalypse. "Relax," Evan said as the jet taxied. "It's 2 days, not a war." "That's easy for you to say. You don't have to coordinate 6 interviews, a car, 2 PR handlers, and 3 photo ops." He smirked. "You're starting to sound like Maya." "Should I be worried?" "She sounds like someone who keeps you alive," Lara muttered, double-checking her notes. When the flight took off, she plugged in her headphones, determined to stay detached. But somewhere over the gray clouds, she caught him watching her from across the aisle, expression unreadable, like he was memorizing a quiet he hadn't seen in years. The hospital was colder than it looked in the photos. White walls, soft light, the faint antiseptic tang that clung to every breath. Evan slipped into the role effortlessly, smiling, listening, kneeling beside kids in hospital gowns. But Lara noticed something different this time. None of it felt rehearsed. He stayed long after the cameras packed up, sitting on the floor with a small boy drawing superheroes on the back of a clipboard. When the boy asked if movie stars ever got scared, Evan said softly, "All the time, especially before something real." Lara stood by the doorway, her camera in hand, pretending to check light settings while her throat tightened. For a man she was supposed to destroy, he was awfully hard to hate. They left the hospital after dark. The car ride back to the inn was quiet except for the hum of rain against glass. Lara scrolled through her phone, avoiding his gaze. Every so often, she'd catch his reflection in the window, head tilted back, eyes half closed, exhaustion softening the lines of his face. She wanted to ask if the kindness was real or just another mask, but the words stayed caught behind her teeth. Half an hour later, her eyelids grew heavy. The gentle rocking of the car, the rain's rhythm, the day's emotions, all of it pulled her under. She didn't even realize she'd fallen asleep until the car slowed. Evan glanced over, a small, involuntary smile tugging at his lips. Her head had tilted against the window, her hair falling across her cheek. Carefully, he unbuttoned his coat and draped it over her shoulders. She stirred, just enough to mumble something in her sleep. His name, he thought, or maybe he imagined it. He leaned back, the faintest trace of warmth spreading through him. He'd written rule number 1 as a joke. But watching her sleep beneath his jacket, he realized the rule had already broken itself. Chapter 5: The Crack in the Mask. It started with a single photograph. Lara didn't even notice the flash when it happened. A quick burst of light as they left the charity gala. The crowd pressing in, Evan's hand instinctively resting at the small of her back to guide her through. It wasn't romantic. It was reflex, gentle, protective, but cameras never cared about context. By morning, her phone was a grenade of notifications. Evan Hart's secret romance? Mystery assistant identified. Every gossip site had the same shot. Him smiling, her looking up, a moment caught mid-breath that looked far too intimate for comfort. The comments below were savage. Strangers analyzing her posture, her clothes, her worth. She's clearly into him. Another fame chaser. Typical. Who even is she? Lara shut her phone, but the buzzing didn't stop, like the world was laughing on repeat. Then another notification popped up. A private message. One that made her stomach twist. The blogger. That photo's nothing. We need something real. Proof. Or I tell the world you were paid to spy. Her hands trembled. She typed, "You can't. I didn't even. 48 hours. Deliver or I deliver you." She stared at the screen until the words blurred. The weight of her choices crashed in. Her mother's hospital bills, her rent notice, the desperate little voice that had said just this once when she took the deal. And worse, the voice whispering now, "You like him. You actually like him." The guilt tasted like iron. That evening, the studio was nearly empty. Lights dimmed, makeup chairs abandoned, the scent of coffee and dust lingering in the air. Lara lingered near the door, her nerves shot, her phone heavy in her pocket. Evan was there, sitting on a stool with his guitar resting across his knees. The quiet strumming filled the space like a sigh, low, unguarded, almost sorrowful. He looked human. Not the movie star from posters, not the curated public image. Just a man trying to make sense of noise that never stopped. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice softer than she meant it to be. He didn't look up. "Just a long day." Paused, trying to remember why I still do this. Lara hesitated, stepping closer. "Because you're good at it." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "Good at pretending?" The question hung between them, heavy, fragile. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because wasn't that exactly what she was doing too? Pretending. For a while, neither spoke. Only the gentle hum of his guitar filled the silence. A melody that sounded like it was built out of exhaustion and honesty. Then his fingers stilled. His head tilted slightly. "Tell me, Miss Dawson," he said, voice calm but deliberate. "Does that real Queen ever sleep?" The world stopped. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The name hung in the air like smoke. She froze, phone still in her hand, screen faintly glowing, like a spotlight catching a lie mid-performance. Evan finally looked at her. Not with anger, with something worse. Recognition. "I wanted to understand the hate," he said quietly. "So I read it. All of it. Turns out it was you." Her throat closed. "Evan, I should have known," he said, cutting her off. His voice low, almost steady, though his eyes betrayed him. The sarcasm, the restraint, the way you never seemed impressed. "I thought it was refreshing." He gave a small, broken laugh. "Turns out it was research." Lara stepped closer, words tumbling out. Desperate, incoherent. "It wasn't. I didn't mean it started as—" "Don't," he said sharply, then softer. "Please don't." He stood, set the guitar down, ran a hand through his hair as if trying to erase the moment. "I just need space, Lara. I can't even tell which version of you was real." The sound of her name, her real name, cracked something open inside her. He walked past her, each step heavy with the kind of silence that hurts more than shouting. At the door he paused. "For what it's worth," he murmured. "I wanted to believe you were different." The door clicked shut behind him. Lara sank onto the stool he'd left, staring at the still warm guitar, the half-finished melody lingering in the air. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Another message from the blogger, no doubt, but she didn't check. For the first time since she took the job, Lara Dawson didn't have the heart to play her part. The echo of his words haunted her long after he left. Which version of you was real? And for the first time, she didn't know the answer. Chapter 6: Confession Games. Lara didn't sleep so much as she negotiated with the dark. Every time she shut her eyes, the dressing room replayed like a loop she couldn't escape. The unfinished melody, his steady voice, the way he wouldn't look angry because hurt was worse. By dawn, she drafted 3 versions of an apology and 1 clean resignation letter that read like a confession. She printed none of them. The office smelled like citrus cleaner and burnt coffee when she arrived early, restless and raw. She lined up his call sheets, preset reminders, rechecked travel confirmations. If competence could be penance, she'd make a cathedral of it. The door swung open at 8 on the dot. Evan stepped in carrying 2 paper cups, hair damp from the rain, collar unbuttoned like he'd lost an argument with a mirror. He set 1 cup on her desk. "Peace offering," he said. "Or truce. I haven't decided." Her hands stilled on the keyboard. "You're not firing me?" He tipped his head, considering. "I probably should. But then Maya would replace you with someone who calls me Sir unironically. And I don't think I could survive that." Against her will, her mouth twitched. "So I'm here to protect you from excessive respect." "Exactly. A beat. Drink your coffee, Miss Dawson. It's not poison." She lifted the lid. "Oat milk. No sugar." He'd remembered. He didn't sit. He watched the steam curl and fade like a thought changing its mind. When he finally spoke, the softness barely covered the steel beneath. "Finish the tour. Then you can vanish. No drama. I won't say anything that makes your life worse." She swallowed. It felt like mercy and punishment in the same breath. "Why are you being kind?" His mouth crooked. Who said this was kind? There it was again. The teasing, flimsy and familiar, like someone had thrown a blanket over a broken window. She nodded once. Understood. He tapped the desk twice, a metronome of decisions made. "Call time in 20? 15, she said automatically. I padded your calendar for the stylist who pretends you have a different head every day. He laughed, quick and real. God help me. The next days learned a new rhythm. He was professional, mostly, but the edges frayed in ways that made breathing complicated. He'd lean over her shoulder to read an email she was already summarizing, the heat of him close enough to shift her focus by a fraction. When she passed him a script, his fingers would graze her wrist like a question he wasn't ready to ask. In the lift, he'd angle his body so she had space, then steal her space anyway with a grin that arrived first in his eyes. Sharing is caring, he said at lunch, sliding his tray across hers and stealing 3 fries with courtroom-level audacity. You're a menace, she replied, reclaiming 2 fries and his napkin. And a thief. Only from the rich. I earn less than you spend on haircuts. Then I'm redistributing your fries to myself. A moral act. She tried not to enjoy him. She failed daily. The banter worked like a step-down program from the disaster they'd almost become. Poison bled off as humor. Anger turned to sparks. Sparks to warmth they both pretended not to feel. And beneath the surface, a new honesty. That they were facts in each other's lives now, whether they liked it or not. At night, she still drafted apologies she didn't send. She stopped opening the blogger's DMs. Shame receded from a roar to a relentless hum. Guilt didn't leave. It learned to sit. The flight delay was no one's fault and exactly what fate would choose. A thunderstorm folded the city into gray. Their connecting flight blinked from on time to canceled on the departures board with theatrical finality. The lounge filled with sighs and laptop chargers. Lara found the only working outlet and sat on the floor, cross-legged like a child in a library, 2 phones tethered to 1 cable that took turns. This, she said, plugging his in after hers hit 22%, is intimacy, sharing electricity, romance in the modern age, he agreed solemnly, lowering himself to the carpet beside her. I'll write you a ballad about wattage. Make it a sonnet. A bab plug. Tragic that you're funny, he said. It complicates hating you. Tragic that you're bearable, she shot back. It complicates everything. They bought sandwiches from a machine that groaned like it resented feeding them. Taste testing became ritual. He unwrapped his with the gravity of a food critic and took a bite. This tastes like cardboard regret, he declared. I give it 3 stars for effort, she said. Presentation is avant-garde. They laughed. The storm pressed its palms against the windows. The lounge softened. A field of strangers making temporary lives on rented furniture. Time stretched, thin and gentle. He rested his head against the pillar behind them and closed his eyes, voice drifting somewhere between confession and memory. I hate being perfect. She turned, surprised by the unprompted honesty. That's the job description, isn't it? Apparently. He opened his eyes, met hers. If I stop smiling, I'm difficult. If I say no, I'm arrogant. If I tell the truth, I'm ungrateful. There's no version of me that lives outside someone's headline. The words settled between them like a third person, quiet and heavy. I hate myself sometimes, she said, the sentence cutting as it left. For needing the money. For taking this job for all the wrong reasons. He didn't flinch. You needed a way out. His voice was steady. That's not evil. It's human. She looked down at the single scuff on her boot, then back up at him. You're better at forgiving me than I am. I'm trying to be better at forgiving myself, he said, and for the first time she believed him. Their hands reached for the shared cable at the same moment. Fingers met. Neither of them moved. The thread of contact was absurdly simple: skin, heat, pulse, and so loud she could hear it in her bones. He didn't smile this time. He watched her like a man who'd found a map and was deciding if he deserved to read it. Rule number 1, he said finally, voice low. No compliments. Good thing that wasn't 1, she whispered. The storm loosened into rain. The loudspeaker lied about new departure times. The lounge yawned and settled deeper into itself. Here, he said after a while, shrugging out of his jacket. Pillow. I'm not sleeping in an airport, she said. You will in 15 minutes, he replied, rolling it under the arch of the pillar. She lasted 20. He answered 2 emails, adjusted 2 meeting times, and ignored 3 messages from a number he recognized as a publication that wanted blood. When he looked left again, she was asleep. Lips parted, hair flattened absurdly against the pillar, his jacket bunched under her cheek. You're impossible, he thought. And then, because the truth demanded it, so am I. He covered her legs with his hoodie. It wasn't chivalry so much as gravity, care dropping to the lowest, truest point it could reach. He shifted to the opposite couch before he did something he couldn't file under truce. She woke once, not fully, and reached out without looking, fingertips brushing the air like she could locate him by instinct alone. He slid his hand closer until her fingers found the back of his knuckles and rested there, light as a promise neither of them would speak. He slept like that, hand open, as if holding a bird he didn't want to startle. They landed the next morning into a day already running. Cars, calls, the world restarted its program. But something quiet had changed. An internal setting you can't find in preferences, only feel in the responsiveness of small things. He didn't ask her to justify herself. She didn't demand absolution. They worked. They laughed where they could. They held their corners of the same truth. That the past had teeth and the future had a door and the present, for now, had room enough for 2 chairs, 1 charger, and a rule they both kept breaking by breathing near each other. On the ride to set, rain streaked the window in long, forgiving lines. He watched the city smear and sharpen, like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Miss Dawson, he said, not looking away from the glass. Do me a favor. Always dangerous, she murmured. Name it. If you're going to resign at the end, he said, don't do it like a disappearing act. Say goodbye like a person. I'd like to know which version of you is true. She turned her head to study his profile. The tiredness, the line at his jaw that arrived when he meant every word. I'm trying to find out, she said. Which version of me, I mean. Then we're even, he answered softly. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. The car hummed, the city breathed, and the space between them felt less like a wound and more like a bridge under construction. Rope laid, boards waiting, hands learning the knots they'd need. That night, alone in her flat, Lara opened her laptop and deleted the resignation letter that sounded like atonement and none of the truth. She opened a blank document and typed 3 lines. I was wrong. You were human. I want to be, too. She didn't send it. She didn't need to. Tomorrow would ask for something harder than apologies. For now she slept. Not perfectly, but honestly, and in a quiet apartment across the river, so did he. Chapter 7 Lines Crossed. The TV studio smelled like hot lights and panic. Laughter echoed through the soundstage. The kind that came on cue, bright and hollow. Crew scurried with headsets and coffee cups. Producers barked orders into mics that never seemed to turn off. Lara stood just off stage, clutching Evan's cue cards like a shield. She'd perfected invisibility these past weeks, the quiet presence beside a man the world adored. She told herself she didn't mind being background noise. But when you've lived most of your life unseen, invisibility begins to ache. Evan was on the couch under the lights, charming, composed, the kind of easy grace that made even cynics lean in. Lara had learned the difference between Evan Hart the actor and Evan the person. One could survive the spotlight, the other barely tolerated it. Tonight, she wasn't sure which one was on stage. During the break, a stagehand brushed past her, smirking. Must be nice, he said, voice pitched low but not low enough. Carrying his coffee for a living. Lara froze. She pretended to straighten papers she didn't need to straighten. She'd learned to take those jabs. From strangers, fans, sometimes even herself. But this time, Evan heard. He turned, voice calm but razor sharp. She's not my coffee girl, he said. Every word clean and deliberate. She's the reason I show up on time. The silence that followed was surgical. No laughter, no comeback, just the hum of lights swallowing the air. He turned back to the host as the camera light blinked red again, sliding effortlessly into a practiced smile, but Lara felt the words settle like warmth in her chest. When the segment ended, he brushed past her on his way to the dressing room. "Ignore idiots," he murmured. "They mistake kindness for weakness." For the first time in weeks, she didn't know whether to thank him or cry. That night, her apartment felt too small for her guilt. Rain streaked the window. Her laptop glowed with 100 tabs open. Past versions of herself she was ready to bury. At Realty Queen stared back from the screen. Sarcasm, threads, call-outs. She scrolled through the wreckage, fingers trembling, then began deleting. One tweet, then another, then another. Each deletion felt like peeling away old skin. She wanted silence. She wanted to start over. She wanted to be someone who hadn't built a wall out of jokes. But by morning, the silence had turned into noise. Her phone vibrated nonstop. Notifications flashed faster than she could breathe. Screenshots, threads, headlines. Evan Hart's assistant exposed as paid spy. Hashtag fake assistant trends worldwide. His #1 hater was in his own house. Her name, her real name, trended beside his. Her inbox overflowed. Death threats, jokes, heartbreak, pity. Snake. Manipulator. He deserves better. Fire her now. Lara dialed the blogger's number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. And again. Nothing. The line had gone dark. Her usefulness expired. When she looked up, Evan was in the doorway. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He looked furious, but not at her. At the storm. At himself. At the universe that had a taste for irony. "Did you do this?" His voice was low, dangerous. "No," she gasped. "I deleted everything. I swear, I was done with it." He slammed his phone down on her desk. The screen lit up with her face plastered beside his. "They're tearing you apart, Lara. Do you have any idea what these people can do?" Her composure shattered. "You think I don't know?" she snapped. "I've read every comment, every threat. I started this. I know exactly how it feels." He stepped closer, voice cracking under control. "I can handle the hate." "You can't." The way he said it, not arrogance but fear, was what undid her. He grabbed his jacket. "Pack a bag." "What?" 2 hours, he said, already moving toward the door. "We're leaving." The countryside house wasn't on any map. A weathered cottage crouched between wild hills and fog, miles from anything resembling the internet. Evan's version of hiding was isolation. Lara's was pretending she belonged there. He lit the fireplace, tossed his phone onto the table, and stared into the flames like they owed him answers. She hovered by the doorway, soaked in guilt and disbelief. "You shouldn't have brought me here," she said quietly. "You'll only make it worse." He looked up. Too late for worse. Hours passed in silence. Outside, the rain hit harder. Inside, the quiet thickened until it felt like a third presence, accusing, patient. Finally, Lara broke. "You knew, didn't you? You knew who I was." He didn't deny it. "I figured it out weeks ago," he said softly. "I wanted to see how long you'd pretend." Her chest tightened. "So this was all what? Entertainment?" "No," he leaned forward. "At first, maybe. I wanted to make you feel small, to play your game. But then..." "Then what?" she demanded. "Then you ruined the plan," he said simply. "You were supposed to be the villain, Lara, but you turned out human, and I didn't know what to do with that." Her laugh came out brittle. "You're impossible to hate when you're honest." He smiled, tired and rueful. "And you're impossible to trust when you're not." Something inside both of them broke at once. Not loudly, more like a soft internal collapse. The kind that ends wars. Laughter rose out of nowhere. Exhausted, shaky. a relief valve for too much pain. When it faded, silence returned, gentler this time. Evan reached out, thumb brushing the tear that slipped down her cheek. She didn't pull away. Their foreheads met. Not a kiss, not forgiveness, but surrender. For a long, trembling moment, they simply breathed the same air, the fire snapping behind them, the storm still raging outside. And in that fragile space between regret and something almost like grace, both of them understood. The lines between enemy and ally, hate and love, right and wrong, had already blurred beyond recognition. Chapter 8: Falling Without Permission. Silence had never felt so loud. The cottage sat in the middle of nowhere. Miles of fog and damp fields, a half-forgotten place where even cell signals gave up trying. Evan called it temporary exile. Lara called it a bad idea with good lighting. Neither of them left. Days slipped past like scenes from a slow film. Burnt toast, mismatched mugs, playlists that looped too long. They worked side by side or pretended to. She answered the occasional email for Maya. He toyed with unfinished lyrics. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't need to. The quiet didn't feel awkward anymore. Felt honest. She found him different out. Without cameras, Evan didn't posture. He laughed more, softly, unexpectedly, and had this annoying habit of humming while he cooked, which would have been charming if he didn't burn everything down. He blamed the stove. She blamed him. He taught her how to make coffee that didn't taste like punishment. She taught him how to weaponize sarcasm instead of silence. They argued about music, about movies, about whether cereal counted as dinner. And somewhere between the laughter and the long looks that lasted too long, something fragile began to form. Not forgiveness exactly, but the space where it might live someday. At night, when the wind rattled the windows, Lara caught herself thinking about how close they'd come to destroying each other, and how strange it was that destruction could make two people feel so safe. It was during one of those storms, a real one this time, that the power went out. The house fell into darkness, save for flashes of lightning crawling across the sky. The rain hit the roof like applause for some unseen tragedy. Lara padded through the hall with a candle, looking for him. She found him in the living room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, a single flame flickering beside him. His guitar rested across his lap, fingers tracing the strings absent-mindedly. He looked up when she entered. The candlelight caught the edges of his face. Tired, beautiful, almost unguarded. "What are you writing?" she asked. "A song I'll probably never finish," he murmured. "It's called The Truth Hurts Less." She knelt beside him. "Does it?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes from surviving things you never planned to talk about. "Only when you finally say it." He handed her the guitar. "Here, your turn." She laughed softly. "I can't play." "Then fake it. You're good at that." She shot him a glare, half hurt, half amused. But she took the guitar anyway. Her fingers brushed his as she adjusted it. The touch was nothing, and everything. "Show me," she whispered. He leaned closer, guiding her hands along the frets, his voice low enough to feel rather than hear. The storm rumbled. The candle wavered. The air thickened between them, electric in more ways than one. Her heartbeat betrayed her. Fast, uneven. His breath hitched when she looked up, their faces close enough to blur. For a long second, neither moved. The world outside vanished. Just rain, thunder, the warmth of his hand still ghosting over hers. Then, quietly, he kissed her. It wasn't cinematic. No swelling music, no desperate pull. Just the soft, slow inevitability of two people who had run out of excuses. A breath shared, a truth confessed without words. When they broke apart, both of them were trembling. Not from fear, but from how right it felt. She pressed her forehead to his. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. He nodded. "Yeah." But neither moved away. Outside, the storm began to fade. The thunder distant now, the rain softening to a hush. Inside, The only sound was the faint thrum of two hearts that had finally stopped pretending they weren't listening to each other. By morning, nothing had changed, and somehow everything had. They moved around each other carefully, like dancers afraid to repeat a step. The air between them hummed with unspoken what-ifs, heavy with the knowledge that the world would tear them apart if it ever found out. But for now, for this fragile, stolen slice of time, the world didn't exist. Only them. Only the silence that finally felt like peace. Chapter 9, Public Enemy, Private Heart. For a while, they lived like ghosts. No phones, no cameras, no noise. The world outside screamed. They didn't listen. Days at the cottage bled into each other. Quiet mornings with burnt pancakes. Shared glances over steaming mugs. Silence that wasn't empty but full. For the first time in years, Evan Hart wasn't acting. And Lara Dawson wasn't hiding. They didn't talk about what came next. The world would return for them eventually, it always did. But for now, the stillness was enough. Until it wasn't. It started with Maya's voice, crackling through speakerphone one gray morning, sharp and frantic. "Evan, you need to sit down," she said. "They found you." He exchanged a look with Lara across the breakfast table. "What do you mean, found?" "Paparazzi," Maya said. "They got photos, you and Lara, walking through the farmer's market, holding hands." Lara's stomach dropped. "I thought we were careful," she whispered. Maya sighed. "You were. They just needed one frame." Within hours, the headlines multiplied like wildfire. Evan Hart's secret romance with his former spy. Hashtag fake assistant strikes again? Or did she? Career suicide or true love? The actor's fall from grace. Her phone exploded with notifications. Her name trending again. Hashtags twisting her story into something unrecognizable. Lara opened her messages and immediately regretted it. Death threats, memes, hate pages dedicated to her face. Her mother's voice trembled on the phone that evening. "Sweetheart, people are calling the house. They found our address." Lara's knees gave out. The receiver slipped from her hand. By nightfall, the storm reached Evan's management. They descended on the cottage like vultures. Slick suits, colder eyes, voices low but cutting. "Deny everything," one executive said. "Say she's just staff, temporary help." "Apologize to the fans," another added. "Say it was a misunderstanding. And for God's sake, do not go off script this time." Evan listened in silence, jaw tight, thumb tapping his coffee cup. When they finished, he looked up. "You're all fired." They stared at him, mouths open. "Excuse me?" He stood. "I said, get out." They left, confused, furious, already calling legal. Lara stood by the window, pale and shaking. "Evan, they're right. You'll lose everything." He turned to her, eyes fierce but soft. "I've spent my whole life apologizing for being human. I'm not doing it again." "You can't protect me from this," she said. "Not from them." "I'm not trying to protect you," he said. "I'm standing with you." The simplicity of it broke something in her. For a second, she hated him for making her believe that love could be stronger than fear. The next day, he went live. No stylist, no PR handler, no script. Just a man in a worn shirt, sitting in front of a webcam, eyes tired but steady. "Hi," he said quietly. "It's Evan Hart." The stream drew hundreds of thousands of viewers in minutes. "I know what everyone's saying. Some of it's true. Some of it isn't. But I won't hide anymore." He paused, exhaling. "I spent years trying to control every headline, every rumor. I thought perfection was survival. Then I met someone who showed me how much damage pretending can do." He looked straight into the camera. "She wasn't my enemy. She was my mirror." The chat went wild. Hearts, hate, disbelief. Some fans cursed him. Others defended him. But for the first time, Evan didn't flinch. Lara watched on screen with her hands trembled as his voice filled the room. The same voice that had once been untouchable, now trembling with truth. She wanted to scream at him for doing it. She wanted to kiss him for doing it. By the time the live stream ended, her face was wet with tears. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was messy, brave, stupid, and painfully real. Outside, the city buzzed with gossip and outraged. But for the first time, she didn't care who was watching. Because love, the real kind, didn't need an audience. Chapter 10: Ordinary Love. Months passed. The chaos faded, not because the world stopped talking, but because they stopped listening. Evan returned to work. The hiatus ended the moment a script landed in his inbox. A film about a man learning to tell the truth after years of pretending. The irony wasn't lost on him. The media called it a comeback. His fans called it redemption. He just called it a second chance. And this time he didn't hide. Lara didn't either. She had launched her small media firm, True North Communications, helping artists navigate fame without losing themselves. It started in a rented co-working space, with mismatched furniture and coffee that tasted like burnt dreams. But word spread fast. She was sharp, ethical, and unflinchingly kind. Her first few clients were indie musicians. Then came actors. Then studios. Sometimes, when her phone buzzed, she'd still expect headlines, hate. But instead, she found invitations, thank yous, praise. The noise had finally changed tune. And somewhere between rebuilding herself and helping others rebuild, she learned something important. She didn't need to erase her past to deserve her future. The first time she saw Evan again was at a charity gala 6 months after everything collapsed. He was on stage, tux crisp, smile easy. Not the armor it once was, but something warmer, realer. When his speech ended, their eyes met across the crowd. He didn't approach immediately. He waited until cameras were gone, until she was alone by the dessert table, pretending not to look for him. "Miss Dawson," he said softly behind her, "you still prefer lemon tart over chocolate cake, right?" She turned, startled, and smiled despite herself. "You remember that?" "I remember everything that annoyed me about you," he teased. "And somehow, it's all my favorite stuff now." She rolled her eyes, but her voice trembled. "You're impossible." "I know." His grin softened. "You still hate me?" "Only on days ending with Y." He laughed. That laugh she hadn't realized she missed until just then. They talked for hours after that, slipping back into rhythm as if no time had passed. The tabloids snapped a few pictures, the actor and his ex-assistant reunite, but this time they didn't hide. Neither of them had to. A year later, Evan's new film premiered in London. It was his most vulnerable performance yet. Critics called it a quiet masterpiece. The final scene, where his character finally tells the woman he loves that fame isn't freedom without honesty, made the audience cry. Backstage, Lara waited. Not as staff, not as a secret, as someone who had lived the story with him. He found her after the curtain call, still wearing that same crooked grin. "So, did I do all right?" She tilted her head. "You were okay." "Okay." She smirked. "You forgot your line halfway through the confession scene." "I improvised," he said. "Like life." Before she could reply, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're coming with me to the after-party, right? You realize that's going to set the internet on fire again?" she asked. He shrugged, his hand brushing hers. "Then let it burn. We'll dance in the ashes." She smiled, heart pounding. That same dangerous, dizzy kind of joy she thought she'd outgrown. "Fine," she said softly. "But only because I want to see how bad you are at dancing." "Terrible," he admitted. "But I make up for it in enthusiasm." He kissed her then, in the wings with cameras flashing just beyond the curtain. And this time, neither of them cared who was watching. Weeks later, a magazine article called them Hollywood's most unexpected love story. Evan laughed when he saw it. Lara groaned. But the photo, the one the article chose, made her pause. It wasn't staged. It was candid. Him mid-laugh, her hand in his, both of them unguarded, unposed. The caption read, "They stopped pretending. The world kept watching." And maybe that was their version of a happy ending. Not perfect, not quiet, but ordinary in the most extraordinary way. The morning after the premiere, he showed up at her apartment with 2 coffees and that same grin. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, amused. He leaned against the counter. "I'm between roles. Thought I'd audition for yours." She laughed. That full, unrestrained laugh he'd missed for months. "Still hate me?" "Only when you leave dishes in the sink." He smiled. "Good. Wouldn't want to lose the spark." The sunlight poured in, painting them gold. 2 people who'd weathered storms, faced the crowd, and still chose each other. Lara looked up, heart steady for the first time in years. "You're in the wrong story now, you know?" Evan reached for her hand. "Good," he said. "That's exactly where I want to be." And this time, when he kissed her, it wasn't quiet or careful. It was everything they'd fought for, loud, certain, and completely real.